So, today I would like to talk with you guys about Shadow and Bone, a young adult fantasy adventure novel, first book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and the very first book in the Grishaverse series. I will try to keep my synopsis of the book short since you either read the book already and therefore you know perfectly well what's happening in it, or you clicked on this video to get to know if the book is worth reading, and so I would like not to spoil it to you by recapping the whole thing. After the synopsis, I'll go into more detailed spoiler-free review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. But no worries, as I said, if you haven't read the book, I'll make sure to let you know when you should click off the video. Alrighty, so grab a cup of delicious tea and let's begin. So, Shadow and Bone. The main idea of the book is quite simple. We follow a teenage girl named Alina who lives in a war-torn kingdom of Ravka. The book has a nifty map that helps you understand the world Le Bardugo is trying to build a little bit better. But to explain it simply, there are 5 major regions that rule the world. So we have Ravka, Fjerda, Shuhan, Kerch, and Novi Zem. All of those regions are somewhat based on the actual countries in Europe and Asia. It would take a whole video to talk about the speculations of which country represents what region, but for now let's just concentrate all of our attention to Ravka, which is totally Russia, by the way. I mean, names, Ravkan language, the cold weather, constant drinking of kvass, that just screams Russia to me. So Ravka is the country that is torn by war and is somewhat underdeveloped when it comes to weaponry and technology. Ravka dropped the ball in those industries, as Ravka is the only place in the world that truly accepts and appreciates people with magical powers called Grisha. All children at a young age are being tested, and the ones who are discovered to be Grishas are being taken to special schools to learn how to control and use those powers in order to help Ravka to stay in the position of power. Another thing that truly puts Ravka into disadvantage compared to other countries is a thing called Unsee, or the Shadow Fault. It's sort of like a rip in the territory of Ravka, accidentally created by an incredibly powerful Grisha known as the Black Heretic. In the Fall, there is no light and no life, besides the vicious monsters of the dark that attack everyone who dares to step into the Unsee. Anyhow, back to Alina. Alina grew up in the orphanage, and the only person she has in the whole wide world that cares about her is her best friend named Mal. They both serve in the Ravkan army, and where Alina is shy, constantly tired, and lacks some self-esteem, Mal is outgoing and easily wins everyone over with his good looks and charming personality. But one day, when crossing the Shadow Fault, Alina is put in the position which forces an incredible and unique power to manifest. And that's where our real adventure begins. So I know this book has been released all the way back in 2012, and like in a month we're gonna get an adaptation of Shadow and Bone on Netflix. And that this is the main reason why most of the normal people got suddenly interested in Shadow and Bone again. Me, however, I had no idea that Shadow and Bone trilogy or Grishaverse or any Netflix adaptations even existed until just a couple of months ago, when I was recommended to read Six of Crows by Le Bardugo. And I know this video is not about the Crows duology, though that video is definitely coming as well, but I fell in love with the characters of Six of Crows so fast, with the world building, with Le Bardugo's writing, that just in a period of a couple of months I already owned and read all the books in Grishaverse and was impatiently waiting for the Rule of Wolf to be released. But let's go back to Shadow and Bone. Though it's the first book released in the Grishaverse, it's also the 3rd book in the Grishaverse that I personally read, which I think did me a great disadvantage, mainly because my bar was already pretty high, and Shadowbone being the very first book released by Le Bardugo and being written keeping the younger audience of the young adult genre in mind felt a little bit of a disappointment. Alright, just hear me out. The story in Shadow and Bone is super simple. It also follows the tropes of the young adult genre to the T. I mean, the protagonist is an outsider. Check. The parents are dead. Check. The dystopian world. Check. The protagonist is the chosen one. Check. And those are the only ones that I can actually mention without spoiling the book. And yet, if anyone would ask me whether I enjoyed the book or if I would recommend it to the others, I undoubtedly say hell yeah. Especially if you are into fantasy or young adult novels. When it comes down to it, for me, it didn't really matter that the book is filled with young adult tropes and somewhat shallow on the plot. I still had a hella good time reading it. For me, it was a page turner. I got excited about joining Alina on this journey. Leigh Bardugo created a wonderful world full of magic and mystery. The type of world that I'm fascinated to read about and that I would have dreamed to be a part of if I would be just 10 years younger. And most importantly, it only gets better from here. With every book, Leigh Bardugo improves the story and the characters. She becomes bolder with the things she writes about and how she represents the Grishaverse. Shadow and Bone was good. Stage and Storm was better. Ruin and Rise was great, and Six of Crows was excellent. On that note, if you haven't read the book yet, but you think it's something that you would enjoy, I would advise to turn off this video now, as we are going to step into the spoiler territory. Okay, so now that we can talk freely, what should we start with? Darkling being the Black Heretic? The kind of weird love triangle, which is not really a love triangle because Alina clearly only ever had eyes for Mal? Oh, I know. Let's talk about how somehow the good guys in this book ended up being more hated by the general audience than the villain. After reading this book, I've seen so many reviews that diss on Alina, mainly because of one of these two things. One, she is not that pretty, as in skinny and malnourished, because no heroine of young adult novel is allowed to be an exceptional beauty, as that would make it harder for young, self-conscious girls to relate to. And two, she's moody, like really moody, always seeing the worst in situations and people, and passive, and kinda mean, especially when it comes to her inner monologue, and the way she perceives these prettier than her as someone having much easier life than she does. Now, I see where you're coming from, and you're right, to an extent. It's not much fun to read about a character who constantly disses on herself. But just to play devil's advocate here, it makes sense for Alina to be tired and malnourished. One of the few things that we learn in Grishaverse about Grisha power is that Grisha, who try to suppress and hide their power, will be getting more sickly and tired with time. So the more power they use, the stronger they get. Alina has been suppressing her powers for years, and suppressing them so well that she herself didn't realize that she is Grisha. Holding back such a power for such a long period of time could not have been good enough for her physical nor for her mental health. And for her being mean to other prettier Grishas, I actually think most of this was handled pretty nicely by the author. Now imagine if you have not had a single good night's sleep for 10 years. Now on top of that, imagine being in love with your best friend and having to keep on watching him getting involved with a chain of other girls, all much more confident than you. Now that is bound to mess a little bit with your head and make you somewhat cranky and insecure. And yes, I know that I'm looking for excuses and that at times Alina is just shallow and just a little bit pessimistic or indecisive, but she's also supposed to be a teenage girl. And I speak as a former teenage girl. Being insecure and anxious was kind of my thing. As for Mal, for me, honestly, he wasn't even much of a character in this book. I felt like I didn't really get to know him at all. He was just there. He was there in the beginning of the book before Alina discovered her powers, and he was there to save her after she left Oz Alta. Beside that, I can't say anything real about his character. He's good at tracking. We didn't get a chance to actually experience the friendship between Alina and Mal, and therefore the love declaration from Mal felt a little bit forced and out of blue for my liking. I think I would have been happier with a slow burn romance. I would rather see them stay friends who try to fight Darkling together, And Mal not being able to kill Alina in the end being the very first time he even gets an idea that maybe he likes her a little bit more than a friend. Anyhow, we got what we got. Oh, and as for the love triangle, after I was done reading the book, it was hard for me to understand why people see a love triangle in this book. Darkling is not in love with Alina. He might be curious to finally find someone as unique as he is, but overall for him she is nothing but means to an end. And Alina is not in love with Darkling either. At best she has a misplaced crush on him, though in my personal opinion, more than anything she's just infatuated with the idea that someone actually likes her and chooses her. And then of course, so let's not forget that she's a hormonal teenager and Darkling is a handsome man who shows her a lot of attention. Once she gets to know that Darkling is actually a bad guy who's planning to use her powers for evil, she leaves immediately, and it doesn't seem to me that she feels heartbroken about leaving Darkling behind. Her new life, yeah maybe, but not the Darkling. Which brings us to the only love story in this book being between Alina and Mal. So last but not least, let's talk a little bit more about the actual plot of the book. I mean, it is incredibly basic. There's no arguing about that. A simple girl, a nobody, suddenly realizes she has incredibly magical powers and is being taken to school where she needs to learn how to control her powers and save the world. I mean, when you're retelling the plot vaguely like this, it almost sounds like a gender-reversed Harry Potter fanfiction. The story takes a more interesting turn when Alina actually leaves the school and starts the mission of tracking the magical stag herself. Well, more like following Mal around while he's trying to hunt the magical stag by himself. Even though it is a little bit of a cliche, I did like the fact that Alina chose to show kindness to the stag, and that was the reason for them being captured again. As well as I like that the only way for her and Mal to escape Darkling once more was to sacrifice the people on the ship during the crossing of the Unsea. It shows nicely that even though she's not a cruel person, she is capable of doing what needs to be done when she's really pushed into a corner. Well, but that's just my opinion. What about yours?